Hi everyone, welcome to the second video of this channel wherein we are going to build a countdown timer. You must have come across various countdown timers. Everyone has one in their mobile phone wherein you input a time and then you start the timer and then the clock runs backward till the timer completes. In this video, we are going to learn how to build that using ReactJS and Tailwind CSS and basic JavaScript for calculations. So let's get started. npm create @latest, and then it asks us for a project name. We'll enter the name as timer, keeping the package name as timer2, and then selecting React. Let us use JavaScript, and that's it. And now to get a project started, I'll have to check out the repository, check out the folder cd space timer, and then do npm install and this will take a couple of minutes, but it will make sure that all the packages are installed. And when that's done, we're going to follow the third step that's mentioned here. This will start a dev server for us, npm run dev, and here it is. It started the dev server for us at localhost 5000. Yep. And starting that on the web browser, I can see this template page that's appearing. Time to open it up in our VS Code. So I go to documents, timer, and then I'll just drag and drop this to my VS Code, which opens up this. Let us have a look at the project structure. Here we have the source folder, which has this asset that we won't need, so we delete it. And then we go to app.jsx. Whatever is there inside, we don't need any of it. And then we also don't need this line. Just return an empty div with, let's say, Smart Software Studio. We've deleted the assets, so remove it all. And yeah, Smart Software Studio gets rendered. And this index.css, we'll remove every single thing from it. Let us set up Tailwind CSS. So I'm going to the Tailwind's documentation, installation. Here it's described the steps that I need to follow to install Tailwind. I'll open up a new window in the terminal. I use this plugin OhmyZSH. That's very useful for auto-completing stuff in my CI. I'm starting with the install. Let me just clear this out. I run npm install -d tailwind css. It installs tailwind css for me, and then I'll have to initialize it. For that, I run this command and then create a tailwind css. Okay, wait, I initialized it in the wrong place. I need to initialize it in my app. Yep. And it created a tailwind config.js. Now I need to make sure that the content in my tailwind config supports the files that I want to work with. The content is empty here. I'm just going to replace it with the files that I wanted to work on. I wanted to work on GSX. TSX I can avoid. If I were to use TypeScript, I would have used those. And then I have to go to index.css. Here it says input.css, but I don't have such a file. What I have is index.css. I'll paste those 3 lines there. And the next line is this, wherein I want to start a build process. I go to my terminal. In this new window, I paste this command. I have to just change this input.css to index.css because that's the file that I have, and enter. What this will do is it will build all the CSS and it will output it all to output.css. And now I have to tell my app to refer this output.css. So I'm going to copy this line over here and I'm going to go to index.html, and here I'm going to just paste that line here, telling my app that it has to refer to output.css. And I think we're all set. Let's get started. So we want a timer, but we first want to input the timer somehow. There are various ways in which you can do that. You can have an input field on your form, or you can have user prompt this out to you. Right. Let's get started. To get started, we will first import a React hook called as useState. This is a very common React hook that helps us maintain state variables. It returns two things. The first thing it returns is the state variable itself, and the second is a function to update that state variable. So in our case, our state variable is timer and its initial value would be 0, and we would use the function setTimer whenever we want to update the timer. Now let's start by showing an input to the user. I think we'll get rid of this, and instead we will render an input of type number, wherein its value would be timer. Whatever value we get, we are going to show the we're not going to show the value of timer here, but what we're going to do is whatever change happens here, whatever value we get, we're going to use the setTimer function to set the timer here, which means that any input that the user does, that input would then be passed to the setTimer function and the timer would be set. So to do that, we would also, let's say, log the timer here just to check. Our input is going to be the main thing, but let's say if I enter time as 120, then it reflects in my timer. If I enter my time as 5600, it reflects the same there. Now let's style this a bit. So to do that, we're going to obviously be using Tailwind classes. Let's just format this up a bit. So for React, to enter a class, we use class name. Now we want to give it a nice I think the border already exists. What we want is for it to have some padding, and then for the border to be a bit rounded. What if we round it a bit more? And let's enter some class on the parent. We want to align it to the center, so we reduce the width of the parent by half, and then we say that we want margin on both the side of it. So M stands for margin, X means left and right. On the both left and right side of it, I want a margin, and I want the margin to be automatically calculated. So I say MX auto. None of it is taking effect. Seems like our Tailwind classes are not working. It's rebuilding. Did we forget something? I think we did. I think we need to go to vite config and here import Tailwind CSS from Tailwind CSS, and then CSS post CSS plugins Tailwind CSS. We need to configure this for our Tailwind CSS to work, and nothing is reflecting for some reason. Let's maybe restart this build. So I'm going to just stop it and run the command again, the watch command, and this time still nothing. Let us log something to see if, yup, it's getting called. What else do we change for it to work? We've updated our Tailwind config, let it know that we want to work with JSX, and we've updated our index.css. All the steps mentioned were done. What happens if I remove this class and this class too? No change. What is there inside the root? Here's the input, and we see nothing because maybe there's no border. Let's start again. We give it a border. I just want a normal border. Border background Ray 400, a little bit of padding, and that's it. I think our input is visible now. Let's go to the parent again, reducing the width by half, and then M margin X means on left and right, and then auto, which means automatically calculated, and then maybe also center align it. So text center would help us center align it, and then from the top we need some margin from the top. So MT margin top 20. It could be more, 50. I don't think 50 is the number. 52. I think this should be good enough for now, and let's make it a little lighter but a little thicker. Yup, like this. And then we want this to have some width too, so width full. Yep, this looks good. Or maybe 80% of it. So 80% can be done this way in Tailwind. Yes, and let's curve the margin borders. So rounded MD curves them a bit. Yes, and then let's add a label to it. So let me give this a parent first, and then let's add a label, and the label would say enter a duration in seconds. Enter a duration in seconds. And let's style this a little bit. Or for now maybe that's good enough. For now this is good enough, I think. So what I want is for this timer to be there if no timer is set, and then I accept a duration which then sets the timer, and once the timer is set we will show the stopwatch that would then be manipulated, played, paused, reset, etc. Alright, so let's just make sure that this appears only when the timer is not there. So if timer is 0, what is this doing? Get a variable maybe, and we'd call it input form. And we'd give it let input form, and if timer is 0, then input form would be all of it. And I think this should be independent of the condition. Here we just show timer is 0, to show input time form, else show the timer, and the let could come here itself, and we can let it go from there. Let's try it out. So there's no timer yet. If okay, this got called way too quickly, so maybe I don't need it on change. Maybe what I need is for it to have an ID, duration, and then let's also have a button, and we'd call it set, and we'll have an on click, and we want when the button is clicked, then set timer, and it should document dot get element by ID, and that ID is duration, and whatever value it has should get set in timer. Let's test it out. Okay, there's some issue. Maybe instead of this, let's call a function accept duration is the function that we call. And what does this function do is that it would just get the duration, and then it would set the timer with it. Just correcting the indentation. Cannot access accept duration before initialization. I think this can go out maybe. The problem is still here. Cannot read properties of null. So if I remove the value, set timer is undefined. I think it needs to be inside, but maybe here instead. And the errors still continue. Too many re-renders. React limits. Accept duration. I think we got it. The button is appearing right next to this. We don't want that, so we'll give this parent a class. We want it to be flex column, one after another. Flex helps us adjust things in either rows and columns, and flex column means that I want a column layout. And I think that so because we've called it flex column, to align it in center, we call the class item center, better align. And then to have some sort of spacing between it all, we would use space and then hyphen y. Y means on top and bottom, and then we give it a value of 2, so it adjusted the spacing a bit. If I change the value to 4, it adjusts it even more. So now this has some good spacing. Maybe for now we can have it as 2, and then let's have some class here. For now we're giving it just random style. For now we will style this all properly soon, but for now this is what our button is going to look like. And now let's say we accept a timer 120 seconds, and I do set, and then my timer is no longer visible. Okay, it appeared because of H1 for some reason. Objects are not valid as React child for some reason. Timer layout is something we can have, which would just be, for now, let timer layout, and wherein we have a div that shows the timer. For now, let's try once again. I enter a value, set. Again, the above error occurred in the div component. Consider if you meant to render a collection. So this one thing is clear, that the problem that's happening now is because, okay, so maybe it's trying to set the wrong thing there. Document dot get element by id duration, and then let's log duration to see if we're getting the right value. And I enter 120 and set, and yep, it worked. So yeah, it's working now. That was all for the first part of the series. In the second part, we will continue on how to make our timer start, pause, and reset the timer so that it functions like an actual countdown timer should. So stay tuned for the next video.